Well, he's clearly got a lot on his mind. That first half hour of the speech railing against the West, but all of the talking points we heard there and heard again in that clip are ones that we've heard really before, that this is an existential battle for Russia, that Russia needs to defend the motherland against the marauding evil West who is out to destroy it, that Ukraine is not sovereign, that, interestingly, saying that the Ukrainian people were being used by the Kyiv regime and by their Western masters as cannon fodder, which is obviously one of the phrases that, was used by a lot of protesters here when mobilization happened. We are not cannon fodder. And that has been discussed when you look at some of the terrible slaughter, really, on both sides, but also in the Russian casualties around towns like Bakhmut at the front line, Wagner mercenaries, a lot of them prisoners being sent in for the slaughter. That phrase, cannon fodder, being used across a lot of the Russian military blogs. Now, President Putin using it in relation to the Ukrainian people themselves. Let's just remember who is bombing not just energy infrastructure across the country, but entire towns like Mariupol, like Bakhmut, like Kharkiv, like Kyiv still. That is Russia. It is not the West. And then we had, for longer than an hour, a lot of discussion about how to support people involved in the special military operation, how to keep the economy going, how to help people in this country. Interestingly, what he said about those people who had made money in the West, who had educated their children in the West. And I can assure you that there are plenty of people sitting in that room listening who still educate their children in the West and have children living in the West, some of them very important state figures. But his line to them really was, the West will only treat you as Western citizens. It's important that you focus your attention, your resources, if you have any left, and your energy on trying to improve things within Russia. He talked a lot about restructuring the economy, how to ensure that it has a future given all the pressures that the economy faces. It all sounds well and good if you forget the fact that hundreds of thousands of the sort of brightest and best of Russian scientists, Russian IT specialists, Russian business leaders have left the country. So he's right that he needs some pretty fiercely good minds to try and keep things going as sanctions make things much more difficult for Russia over the years ahead. We've had some impressive work from some of the leaders of the central bank, for example, of Russian finance, to try and keep things pretty stable over the last year. And they've succeeded in doing that far more than specialists might have imagined. And Vladimir Putin pointed, for example, to the fact that inflation, he says, in Russia is now at just 4% compared to other Western countries where he said it was closer to 20%. So I think a lot of this speech was about trying to reassure his people that this is a difficult situation, but they must rally together. They must focus their attention on, innovation within the country, that he has good plans for the future. But this is a country and an economy that needs radical restructuring that I'm not sure a 70-year-old KGB man knows quite what to do. He's right that it needs those kinds of measures. Whether they will be implemented anytime soon are a very, very different story. But this was a long, long speech. We'll go out onto the street soon to see how much of it really has been sort of absorbed by the Russian people. But I think the message that he wanted them to hear was that first half hour when he basically said, this is an existential fight. You need to be with us. The West are out to get us, and we will continue to fight and fight hard.